So, this idea kind of popped in my head last night, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. So you know what? We're doing another what if scenario, and this one's going to be a little different. Rather than have a faction in in a universe, what if this faction was made in that universe? So yes, you can see from this title, what if the Federation created Space Marines? So what if you took basically the idea of Space Marines from Warhammer 40k, and what would they be like if they were instead not created by the Imperium, but what if they were created by the Federation in Star Trek? So let's talk about that. Now, first and foremost, this would never happen. I mean, it has happened in some episodes and books, but like a full faction of Space Marines created in the post wars of Earth, yeah, that would never happen. Having said that, though, for this what-if scenario to work, the eugenics war would have still happened. But the thing of it is, in this continuity, in order for the Federation to greenlight Space Marines and the genetic augmentation that it would take to make them, it would have to be a major cataclysm that caused it. Like, caused the Federation to think after the eugenics war to, like, rethink the situation and be like, maybe we do need an army. Like, maybe we do need need like some kind of military defense force that Mako or Section 31 just can't provide. So that would lead to them looking over, and that thing, let's say for this hypothetical situation, the thing that would make them go, maybe we do need some kind of military stronger military force, because Mako's gone, Mako's no longer around, it's been scuttled, and Section 31 is going to Section 31. So this scenario would mean that they'd have to look over the laws after the events of the Earth-Romulan War. Essentially, in this what-if scenario, the Earth-Romulan War would have to be, they still want, like, Earth and Romulus came to the treaty, like, there was still, like, the ceasefire, but it was way too close this time. This time around, rather than the two of them suing for peace after like a 4 or 5 year war, Earth and Romulus battling it out, it would have to be that Romulus in this continuity got way closer to winning. Like, it got way closer to winning, and Earth got away with that ceasefire by the skin of their teeth, and furthermore, it probably even damaged some of their credibility with the other races. But yeah. Now, that would in turn lead to the this kind of outcome would lead to Starfleet going, you know, the Klingons are still out there, and God knows what else is going to come after us. So we do need some kind of military branch to assist us in these situations. So that would lead to the Space Marine project. So how would Space Marines be in this continuity compared to the Warhammer continuity? Like, what would a Federation-created Space Marine be like? Well, the thing is that, like I said, eugenics, eugenics codes and regulations in Starfleet would have to be done away with, and it would have to be under a lot of scrutiny, because this would be under Section 31, but Starfleet would be like, we're breaking a lot of rules that we set up after that horrendous war. We don't want another Khan Noonien Sun, you know, we don't want another Khan, so we are going to take precautions to make sure that's the case. These soldiers would be created by and chosen. And yes, it would have to be at a young age, but the thing is that they wouldn't be kidnapping children. There would be I think they would probably make orphanage programs to, like, bring these children in at a young age and see. It wouldn't be like we're kidnapping children left and right, looking at you, Dr. Halsey and Halo. It would have to be that, like, children would have to be selected from orphanage, or there would be specific cloning involved as well. Now, here's the kicker. Now, here's where the kicker is going to be. Would there still be Primarchs for these Federation ones? Yes, but not in the way you think. Basically, the Federation, I think, would want to keep the genetic material for these soldiers, for these versions of the Space Marines, in a different form. And what I mean by that is, they would be using, when they're genetically altering these soldiers, they would use bits of DNA from well-documented and well-respected captains in Starfleet. So the quote-unquote Primarchs would just be the genetic material used from well-decorated and well-trained captains within Starfleet. So yeah, there would be a group. There would be Space Marine, Federation Space Marines who would have have the genetic code of Kirk within them, or Picard, or Sisko, even Janeway. And I know what someone's going to say, that's dumb. Why would Janeway get why does Janeway get to have soldiers? Well, it's Janeway, first off. Secondly, that just because she's a woman doesn't mean the soldiers, who would be still men. I'll cycle back to Janeway in a second. But let me point this out, is that all of the Space Marines would still be men, because one of those precautions would be, we can't let these, like the Federation in Section 31, would probably have the thought process of, we can't let these guys breed, so we'd have to, make them sterile. Because again, if they start breeding, there's also that we can't control the ones that that they were bred by. So, bred from, and again, we run into the whole Khan situation. So the soldiers would be, sterilized and, again, genetically altered with the DNA of these captains. And again, just because, Janeway is a woman doesn't mean, she can have sons. Technically, these Space Marines would be her sons. And again, you probably are wondering, well, that doesn't make any sense. How were you born, dipshit? Let me ask you that question. Just because you're, you still have your mom's DNA in you, even if you aren't a girl. I hate to break it to you. I had that conversation not too long ago. That's why I had that blurt out where it's like, it doesn't, clone, why is it that, women, women's DNA can be in men? Because you were born from them. And again, it's genetic editing, so yeah, there would be genetic editing, but still, they'd still be Sons of Janeway, which would probably be their chapter name, if I'm being honest. But yeah, so they can still be boys, they would just have Janeway's DNA in them and they would probably, the DNA wouldn't be in the same way the Primarch is. They would still be genetically altered to be super strong, fast, all of that, and have, Space Marine armor. But they would have the skills and mindset and even the diplomacy. That's going to be another big thing with these Space Marines, is that they would have the diplomacy skills and the tactics and skills of these captains who came before them. So 100 years from after Picard's dead, he's going to have Space Marines who have his thought process, his form of diplomacy, his form of, combat skills. And how they would all think like Picard, or others who would all think like Kirk. Yeah, they probably wouldn't breed like Kirk, but they would think like him. I would even say that they would probably, as the Federation probably brings in other races, these Space Marines would also have DNA from other races. I do imagine they would probably keep the gene seed of Spock in some of them, or, some Andorians, or, other races that get brought in. Now, the big thing is that these guys, again, diplomacy would be a big thing with these Space Marines, because rather than reading from the Codex Astartes, these ones would be reading from the the Galactic Federation protocols. So rather than, but brother, that's not supported in the Astartes, it'd be more like, brother, that is not in the Prime Directive. They'd also not, these Space Marines would also not be, I imagine these Space Marines would also not be full of religious fervor. They would be more of there is some programming in their body, but not to be religious zealots. It's more along the lines of, they're here to, they adhere to the Federation, have loyalty to it. Now, they do have their own they would have a little more, a little less, let me be honest. They'll probably have a little less autonomy as the Warhammer Space Marines do. Because in the Warhammer Space Marines, the Space Marines are going to do what a Space Marine does, which is anything they fucking want, as long as they can skirt around the Codex Astartes. So, this would be a lot more government oversight, because again, we don't want a Khan. So, that would be a big thing, is that the Federation would be having a lot more oversight, because they understand this could backfire on them a lot more than the God Emperor thought about it. And yeah, you maybe think, well, what about, like, there's no chaos, so that wouldn't happen. Yeah, but people are still going to be people. So, and again, they're kind of breaking their own rules, so of course they're going to be like, we have to put in safeguards everywhere we are. So there would be a lot more, Federation oversight in the use of the Space Marines. Now, having said that, there would be probably legions, but each one would have like a different one, different speciality to them. Like there would be stealth ones, like the Raven Guard were. There would be more for siege and for tactics, like the Iron Warriors. There would be like each of these these Federation Space Marines would be used with different strengths and weaknesses genetically edited into them. And again, going to their quote-unquote Primarchs, that would that would also have a hand in their creation, and how they would be specialized. There'd be some, like, I imagine, like, Picard's, his quote-unquote children would be more like the Ultramarines, or he would be almost like the Gilliman of, Picard would almost be like the Rabute Gilliman to his Space Marines. They'd also wouldn't have, like, religious fervor for their Primarchs. They wouldn't see them as holy. They wouldn't program that in them, but they would probably program a form of, like, honor and respect for their for the person they're genetically connected to. But it wouldn't be like, we don't see you as a father. I mean, we do kind of see you as a dad, but also we know what we are. We're not like a bunch of, like, imperial angels or see ourselves as gods. We are soldiers, and we are genetically, altered, but we do see you as a father figure, but we're not going to, like, worship you. We're not going to, like, worship, Cisco. We're not, if we see Cisco, if Cisco's gene seed Space Marines, it's like, see him, they're not going to be like, Holy Father, and kneel before him. Also, let's talk about the weaponry real fast. We're not having chain swords or bolt guns. These guys would have phasers, and when the Klingon alliance happens, I imagine these guys would not only have, like, swords that would be similar to, like, batleths or something like that, but I also imagine that the Space Marines, once the Klingon alliance happens, they would, the ones who would be selected for the Space Marine program. Also, another thing, now that I think about it, and I know this is going to contradict what I said earlier in the video, but I just had that thought, the Federation's way more technologically advanced. Like, I just had this, they're more technologically advanced. They wouldn't need to take children. They could just, the technology they need would just be people they would select. They probably still would have men, to keep, more than likely to have, just have men and probably sterilize them. And even, like, I think the Federation would even tell them flat out, look, you've been selected for the Space Marine program. I want you to understand you're not going to have kids. If you don't want that, back out now. So yeah, I do think that, like, now that I realize, I was like, oh yeah, they have way more advanced technology. They don't need to, like, kidnap children and have them go through a process that would kill a person. And also they would take willing candidates for these God, why didn't I think of that sooner? Fuck. I know someone in the comments already who probably didn't get this far is probably already typing that has already typed that in the comments already. But I digress. Getting back to the weaponry that the Space Marines would have, again, it would probably be like they would be trained by Klingons once the alliance happens. They would also learn, spend hours studying other alien tactics, and they wouldn't have the caveat. They wouldn't have the thing of the only good Xeno scum is a dead Xeno scum. They would be like, it's the enemy. They're enemies. They're enemies to the Federation. So I'm gonna fight them. So, and I have no, like, genetic racism programmed in me to do so. I think also they would have specific ships. I guarantee, like, if this was set after the Romulan War, the Space Marines' first big test would be the 4-Year War, the first war with the Klingon Empire. I think it was. Yeah, I think the 4-Year War was the first Klingon war with the Empire, the first Klingon war with the Federation and the Empire. So that would be their big test. I also think they would be given the Ares class ship as, like, their personal use of ships. The autonomy of them, again, would be government oversight, but I think they would have, like, they would have their own ships, but they would be like inherent to the Federation, and they would have their own like instead of like chapter masters, they would have captains for each of them, and they'd probably be like a lot smaller than a legion. They'd probably be like a crew to man a large ship, or at the bare minimum, at least like I would say like each chapter would be like each legion. It wouldn't even. I don't even think it'd be a legion. I think they would limit each group of specific Space Marine Federation Space Marines to like 500 each max, because they don't want like too many of them out there, and also to have more like to monitor them. Goddamn chair, I swear. Anyway, so yeah, they would be carrying phasers and probably like Klingon Federation type swords in place of chain swords, or just better phasers. They'd also have better military vehicles. They would also probably have stronger armor. Like, I imagine if they're genetically altered, they probably have some some armor that would be like part of what you'd see on a Constitution class ship. It's heavy, but these motherfuckers could probably lift themselves up and run with it. They'd probably even be strong. They might even, thanks to the Federation not being a bunch of terrified of technology jackasses, they'd probably make them even stronger. They'd probably make these versions of the Space Marines even stronger. Now, again, there are some caveats to creating the Space Marines. Let's talk about the negatives real fast. The negatives would be, you gotta keep this shit, you gotta keep how they're created a secret, like, to your grave. You gotta keep the gene seed process, the genetic alterations, all of that fucking secret. Because I guarantee you, the second that... Now, the Klingons, I don't think they'd do it because they would see that as dishonorable. But I'll tell you who would probably want to get their hands on it. I don't know, the Romulans, the Cardassians, the Dominion. Oh god, the Dominion would totally want that. Genetically alter the Jem'Hadar. Ugh. Yeah, that would be a nightmare. Yeah, so they would have to take this shit to the fucking grave. That's they would have to take that how the process goes and safeguard it. Like, this would be Section 31's. Again, they'd probably have the people who would bring up the project, and the Federation would be like, if one thing slips and Romulans start creating their own Space Marines, oh, you're all fucked. So you have to keep that in mind, that you would have to safeguard this, or this would be the equivalent of the Horus Heresy. Rather than, one guy gets stabbed by a dagger and then he's evil now. I'm simplifying. I know that's not the whole thing of Horus falling to chaos, but I'm oversimplifying it. So that was just a joke. But yeah, that would if the Romulans or Cardassians or the fucking Dominion, those would be the big three that would probably want this the most. I'm not saying other races wouldn't, but those would be the ones that would be the most interested and probably have the only other ones that would probably have the technology to create their own variant of a Space Marine, of this version of the Federation Space Marines. And that would be the equivalent of the Horus Heresy if that was the case. That would be their own version. That would be that version of the Horus Heresy. And again, actually, let's talk about another thing. The Borg. They would probably have to create, once they start encountering the Borg, especially after the Battle of Wharf 359, that would be, Wolf 359. So I have said Wharf for some reason, I'm sorry. After that battle, they would have to be considering making stronger variants of the Space Marines to be to have to adapt to battling the Borg. But that's really easier said than done. So there'd probably be a Space Marine chapter that would be created to fighting the Borg. But what if they send in Space Marines before that to battle the Borg, and the Borg now have assimilated Federation Space Marines? Therein lies another problem right there. And again, how does a Space Marine compete against? How would you have a Space Marine compete against? I don't know, the crystalline entities, the Q Continuum, fucking gods. there are some like stuff to balance out these these versions of Space Marines, where they would be very powerful, but they also they have to come with other, you know, caveats that, like, yeah, they're not going to be totally invincible, and also the wars they do fight, they're going to have to, like, safeguard how they create them. So yeah. Anyway, this video could go on and on and on, but I don't want to I don't want to talk forever. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys. What do you think it would be like if the Federation created their own Space Marines? What do you think? How different would they be from? How different do you think they would be from the Warhammer Space Marines? And what kind of weapons do you think they'd have? And how would the training or creation process? And also, what captains or notable Star Trek characters would you like to see as these guys as quote unquote, again, I put quotations, Primarchs? And what would you call these chapters? Just for the hell of it. Just comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.